Okay, this presentation, we had to decide if I was going to do another astrophotography presentation or astronomy observing. So we decided to let the two of them fight it out, and observing won this time. So here we are for astronomy observing tools, compiled and presented by myself, Jim Webster. As always, this presentation is for night sky viewing only. The optical devices as presented within this presentation and discussed are not suited for solar observations and can lead to eye damage or blindness. So let's get started. Accessories. Here before us is all the normal accessories that we're used to: eyepieces, Barlow lenses, battery, finder scopes for the telescope, collimators. We won't be talking about any of that. So let's get started. Telephones have come a long way, from the beginning with the Alexander Graham Bell right up to today with the cell phones. Now, cell phones today are the technology version of the Swiss Army knife. And for us in astronomy, we have the planispheres, compasses, GPS mapping, levels to help us level the telescope tripod, a clear sky chart, a collection of information on and all about astronomy, which kind of makes this a handheld planetarium. To talk about the astronomy apps, key uses are for the weather forecasting, observing sessions, to plan them out, tracking movements of the planets, aurora alerts, letting us know when the International Space Station and other satellites may be passing overhead, helping us identify galaxies and nebulas. The cell phones can also be put into night mode, which is preserving your night vision. We can use the cell phones to align our telescopes and just basically learn, about astronomy.
Uranus.
Some apps that are out there are Stellarium, Sky Safari, Star Walk, Star Tracker, Skyview Lite, and many others. There's plenty out there. You just got to find what suits your needs. Continuing with astronomy apps, we can use the apps for tracking, and that is now able to be built into the next generations of telescopes, as well as with the special adapter attaching it to your binoculars. And here is the Celestron Explorer.
Ready for a new kind of telescope experience? Unlock the power of your smartphone to help you navigate the night sky. Introducing StarSense Explorer by Celestron. It's fast, easy, and accurate. In minutes, you're ready to take a guided tour of the universe. First, dock your smartphone and launch the StarSense Explorer app. Unlike other astronomy apps, StarSense Explorer aligns precisely with your telescope and uses sky recognition technology to pinpoint its exact position in the night sky. Follow the simple instructions, and in seconds, the app generates a list of all the best objects currently visible in the night sky. Select an object from the list and follow the on-screen arrows to the desired object. As you move the telescope, StarSense Explorer recalibrates its position in real time. The bullseye turns green when your object is ready to view in the eyepiece. It's that simple. StarSense Explorer works anywhere in the world, no cell signal required. So whether you're in your backyard or a remote dark sky location, the universe is yours to explore.
the forerunner of the StarSense, as presented in the previous slide, was the StarSense auto-align using the SkyPortal app. I have this particular device using it with my Newtonian scope. It's an okay tool. One of the problems I've ran across with this at the star parties in Island Heights, that starting with the time of the star party versus the how dark it is, this is very light sensitive, so it may not come in all the time. I have no intentions of getting rid of it, and I fully intend of using this device again, because to me it is still a very promising device, and I'm looking to build a shed in the yard to keep my Newtonian in there, and this will be a permanent feature for it. And here we have from the prior NEAF show in 2016, where they're talking on the StarSense auto-align.
So StarSense auto-align literally does just that. It automatically aligns your telescope with the night sky. It actually has a camera here you can see, and it takes a few pictures of the night sky. It's actually the term, it's called plate solving. It uses these star images and it recognizes that star pattern as unique to that region of the sky, and it self-aligns itself. It doesn't get any easier to align your telescope, it really doesn't. So you literally are either tapping on your iPad, connect and align, go, or on your hand control, align, and from there the telescope with StarSense takes over and self-aligns in a couple of minutes.
All right. So this alignment with StarSense, you're talking about initializing the telescope so that it gets its bearings where it is in the sky for the go-to pointing.
That's right.
Now, the other alignment that you might need is if you're using the wedge and you're setting up for long exposure astrophotography, you need to polar align. Will StarSense help with that?
It will. It will help with that as well. Yeah.
So it doesn't do it automatically, but it gives you the feedback that you need so that you can adjust the mount and get it polar aligned.
And you can do it easily. You don't need a view to the North Star. You can use any region of sky and have StarSense help you polar align your mount, and you make your final physical adjustments to do that. And it's actually a lot faster and more accurate than you would by sighting down to see Polaris to do your polar alignment.
That's great.
Moving on from the cell phones, another valuable tool is your own computer and website applications. Here is a short little animation of me with my son's cat, Sylvie, her trying to help me, who's pretty much taken over for our other cat, Penny. She does like getting into things. Key uses, as before: astronomical weather forecasting, observing sessions, tracking movement of the planets, tracking the satellite passes, galaxies, nebular identification, aligning your telescope, learning about astronomy. The computer can be set up to actually control, everything associated with your telescope, and you don't have to be sitting right next to it the way things are nowadays. Applications, of course: Stellarium, Starry Night, as well as a host of others. And there's plenty of websites out there, all the way from NASA, SkyLive, spaceweather.com, Heaven Above, and a large assortment of astronomy vendors, YouTube, and astronomy.tools, which we will now talk about. Astronomy tools is good for setting yourself up for an observing session. You can find your field of view calculations for visual imaging, which we're not going to talk about, and even binoculars. You just plug the numbers in, what you want to look at, and it's going to tell you what you're going to need for the proper setup. You could also chart your the stars overhead, for where you live, and it's going to calculate through date and time what you're actually going to see up there. And of course, it's also got a clear sky chart as well. And this tool will also give you your calculations for your latitude and longitude, which is what you really would need to plug in if you had an equatorial mount. So that's astronomy.tools. And for the convenience of the club members, you will find this on our website under Astronomy Web Tools, along with a host of other things that we have collected for the membership and anyone else who finds us on the web at astra-newjersey.com. Something else that we've recently added, which looks like a periodic table, is the Messier objects ranking by difficulty of viewing. This individual had set this up, by brightness, ease of viewing, the season, whether it's winter, spring, summer, fall. It's a really nice chart, so we have that in there, and the membership can actually, print it out, from a PDF that's in there. The creator of it is on starlust.org, and they do have a host of other good information out there. So check it out. You can link to it right from our club website. So now we're going to go into binoculars. We haven't really talked much about binoculars as far as presentations go for the club membership, so we've added a bunch of slides in here to go over it. Mounting binoculars for stable viewing is imperative. Depending on the size the binoculars have, doing it handheld can be problematic. There are monopods. Monopods are good, but it still gives you a bit of a stability problem. Even from just a simple thing as breathing in and out, that motion of your body can be felt when you're holding the monopod. Next up would be your typical tripod, like a camera tripod. Of course, both of these would need mounting adapters. Both are usable. The tripod one I'm a little bit hesitant on because of where the binocular sits in reference to the tripod leg. If you're not careful, you can kick it. Taking it out of your field of view is the least of your worries, because I have seen in prior star parties where kicking it has led to the binoculars crashing on the ground. My preference would be the parallelogram biological mount, binocular mount. For long viewing sessions, larger heavy models binoculars, mounting is essential to a stable viewing and comfort. The parallelogram mount on a strong tripod is one type of several mounts for binoculars. And we're going to hear Ken from Orion talking a bit about the parallelogram mount.
Hi, I'm Ken with Orion Telescopes and Binoculars, and this is the Orion Paragon Plus Bino Tripod Mount. It's a parallelogram style mount. That's this cantilevered arm right here. The idea is it holds up to about an 80 millimeter binocular, so any binocular up to 80 millimeter diameter fits on this. And it holds it away from the center of the tripod, so you're out on the side here. And it accommodates people of different heights. So this is great for when you're at a star party and somebody tall like me, 6 foot here, can look through it without having to bend down. Or you can just bring it down for the younger kids to be viewing through. And notice, as I moved it, it's still pointed at the same altitude. So as long as you don't move it left to right to point at something this way, it stays at the same location in the sky. So you can just bring it down for the kid to view the Orion Nebula, bring it up for the adult, and a very convenient system, especially when there's a bunch of people with you.
Okay, that is the parallelogram binocular mount. I do have this for my wife Gloria, and I really think it is a great item to have with your binoculars. Next item for the binoculars are binocular chairs. I have seen quite a few of them out there. On the left-hand side, which was a hot product for Sky and Telescope for 2007, was the Star Seeker chair, which looks nothing more than a gravity chair with some coaster wheels on a plate on the bottom, and you can bring the binoculars overhead and move around to wherever you want to. The on the right hand side here is a homemade binocular chair with wood and plumber's pipe, and this guy was pretty handy in making this, and this chair is an extremely smooth chair. I think actually better than the Starseeker chair. So if anybody's interested in making something like this, we could find it online and figure it out for people to actually make the chair. Of course, with binocular chairs, I'm actually maybe one day I'll buy a big binocular for my wife Gloria, get her into a chair. So maybe this will be my next purchase. Of course, if I did do that, Stormageddon would hit, and we'd probably have like a month-long storm. Pretty interesting chair, regardless. Next up is a binocular mirror. It's, instead of looking up that you would normally would with the binoculars, you would look down into a mirror with everything reflecting from the sky into the mirror to your field of view in the binoculars. This one's been out there for a while, since 2001, and we'll listen to Krista Kelly from Optical Mirror giving us a brief explanation of it.
Hi, Krista here with Optical Mirror. Today, I'm going to show you how to create a binocular mount on the cheap. So, first, we have to get our equipment. I found this handy laptop tray on Amazon for $22.88. Super cheap, and then you just need your binoculars, which I'm sure you already have, and then a tripod to put the binoculars on. Now, the great thing about this setup is that the tray and the binoculars are both extremely customizable. So you could be sitting, you could be standing, you could be on your tiptoes. Whatever's most comfortable for you, you can make it happen. And more importantly, in different situations, you may need a different setup. So once you have your equipment, you just need a high-grade optical surface mirror. So for this project, I used a 1/4 inch thick glass first surface mirror with a 1 wave per inch surface flatness. Now this is great for binocular mount systems because the 1 wave flatness minimizes distortion as you're viewing through the binoculars onto the mirror and then up to the stars. So when you receive a first surface mirror, don't be surprised if you see a blue laminate coating, because this actually protects the mirror during shipping and if you need to store it. So this is what it looks like to peel back that blue laminate. And then when you're ready to use your binocular mount, you would just take it all the way off to expose the first surface side. Perfect. So that's the basic setup. See our other videos for a more detailed tutorial on how to put it all together and where to go to get that mirror.
Again, binocular mirror, very interesting concept. It's actually something I'm hoping to one day try. I consider it a nice item to check out, a novelty item, maybe show at a star party one day. But of course, doing that, giving it a try, we'd probably run across the usual cloud cover. Binocular Finderscopes. We saw earlier that we could put the cell phone onto the binoculars. Well, we could do the same thing for Finderscopes as well. And this individual from Stars and Guitar will give a brief explanation of his particular binoculars with his Finderscope.
Here is the Celestron Skymaster 12x60 binoculars, and on top is the Celestron Star Pointer Pro that actually fits in the binocular mount. So what happens is there's a little clip here that actually fits onto the binocular adapter. It goes onto your tripod like that. And then the actual reflex finder bracket fits on here, and the star pointer probe just slides on the bracket. It goes on pretty easily. And once you have it on there, let me see if you can see the bullseye here. Maybe not through the camera here. It's very bright. In fact, let's see if I point the binoculars higher. Maybe it'll be more up. There we go. Oh, it's out of focus. The camera's trying to focus in the distance, right? Is what's happening. So I'll come back down here. It's a really nice bullseye. 2 concentric circles with very fine red, and they're variable from almost invisible to very bright. So that's what you'd want for different sky conditions. With the moon out, you'd probably want it pretty bright, and with the moon's not in the sky, you'd want it less bright. You adjust the position of the bullseye by here, going up and down, and this one here, right, left. So super easy.
Now, binoculars, you can see a lot of objects in them at night. Especially you have the astronomy binoculars. One of the easiest objects with binoculars to look at is the moon. Problem is, as it starts getting brighter, it's gonna become a little too bright in these optics that we have with the binoculars. And people have done different things about putting like moon filters either on the front of the binoculars or even on the eyepieces, and some have even gone to the extent of making their own filters, just like they have done, for solar viewing. They're doing it with lunar observing as well. But there's no need really to spend all this, money trying to get additional filters for the binoculars or even making them. I have found a good pair of sunglasses does just as good a job, and we've tested this out. My wife Gloria, Sam, and myself did a mini star party at Whitesbog some time back, where we were set up on one of the trails where they were doing their nighttime walks around the cranberry bogs, and we had the telescopes up there for people to view along with the binoculars, and we provided them sunglasses to actually look at the moon, which was pretty bright that night, and it worked out well. I keep the sunglasses now with the binoculars in case we decide to start looking at the moon again, so they're there, to view. So we're going to put the binocular discussions away for now, and we're going to jump back to telescopes. Since we were talking about filters, we will go back to filters for telescopes now. First up are going to be your color planetary filters. They draw out subtle details of planets, not normally visible, comparable to using a filter on a camera lens, with the difference being that in astronomy we're attempting to view sites like the equatorial bands of Jupiter or the Martian ice caps instead of something terrestrial. Another popular filter is the moon filter. The brightness of the moon when viewed through a telescope, just like with the binoculars, is pretty surprising. In effect, the full moon is so bright that it could become an undesirable sight through unshielded eyes. Now, I have to tell you, with all these filters, the only filter I have used so far is the moon filter, and I really need to make an effort this year myself to see if I can actually start using the other filters and get myself more familiar with them. Another filter that I've used with my regular camera for Milky Way shots is the light pollution filter. This particular one from AstroMilk is supposed to be an excellent filter for observing deep sky objects, as well for DSLR and CCD, CMOS, and black and white imaging. Most surrounding light pollution is eliminated to this filter's ability to simultaneously block mercury and sodium vapor spectral lines. while allowing visible light and H alpha emissions to get through. I have these, but I've only used them so far for Milky Way shots. So for an observing night, I'm going to have to give this a try. And of course, along with eyepieces, there are kits out there that you can get a whole bunch of these filters as well. Definitely the color planetary filters and the moon filters will come in these kits. The light pollution filter you'll probably have to buy separately. These filters can also be put in a filter wheel for visual. I've seen filter wheels used for astrophotography, but visual is also another route to go with it. You would just put the diagonal onto the filter wheel versus a camera, and then you have it for the eyepiece. This makes it a lot easier than having to screw in and unscrew the filters onto each individual eyepieces during an observing session. Atmospheric dispersion correctors. We've talked a couple of times about this in the last couple of meetings. They reduce the prismatic smearing during planetary imaging, resulting in images with finer detail. They're used for astrophotography, but it can also improve your imaging done with planetary observations, allowing you to see more of the surface details. Now, this problem visually is usually to do with things going on in the atmosphere. If it's a lot of moisture that night, clouds coming through, this device will take care of that. On this slide here is a short YouTube video from this individual in San Diego where he did imaging of Jupiter, and he did use SharpCap to clean up what he was collecting, and it's a pretty good view of Jupiter from what he's done with the atmospheric dispersion corrector. Another device that would need to be tested, I've never used it before, I don't have it for my regular visual, is the focal reducer. It leads to a wider field of view and brightening of image objects, which is important for reducing the exposure time when imaging, but can also be useful for visual, lowering the magnification and creating a better visual observation. Again, I haven't done this yet. This is something that would have to be tested out. So, we'll look into it at some point. The Wilcox or rotating tube rings. Now, if anybody who has a Newtonian telescope on an equatorial mount like I have, you will encounter problems where when you're slewing around, suddenly that eyepiece is suddenly in a spot where you just can't get to. And what I did in the beginning was I made this rotating tube ring from tubes that you would find in the pet shop for your aquarium, and I put some straps inside of them so I could tighten them down, and that secured the telescope where I can actually rotate the OTA around to where the eyepiece was in a better position for visual astronomy. The next upgrade required me purchasing actual tube rings. I placed them on both sides of the telescope, and you unscrew the center to allow you to rotate the tubes, and it was a much better and cleaner arrangement than the tubes from the aquarium setup. I've used this at star parties. It works great. And our next slide here, a YouTube video for Maximum Astronomy, will go through a brief description of it.
So let's say you're trying to observe something that's right up overhead, and you can't quite get to it. Well, the trick is now, this acts as basically a hard stop, so the tube doesn't slide down through, because when you loosen these two to adjust the OTA, this one can't move. So if you have this one tight like it should be, you pull these off, and then your whole tube is able to rotate in its own assembly to your desired position, and then you tighten these down, and now you have the eyepiece over here.
Now, in his sample here, he used one additional tube ring. I had preferred to use two because, God forbid, if the OTA is actually tilted more in one direction, I did not want to see it sliding out, down the other side if I had everything loosened up at the time or forgot to retighten it. So I felt it was better for myself to have two additional tube rings. It's, your personal preference. It does make the scope a little bit heavier, but I thought it was well worth it. Dew control, keeping your scope optics dry. A lot of us are already familiar with dew shields, dew heaters, the heater control. Some of the more expensive units will have temperature and humidity sensors, and you could also get dew heating control for your Finderscope. Now, what you don't see too much of is these desiccant dryer packs, or even a cap. The cap you would use to put into the end of your where your eyepiece would go, just to keep everything dry within the telescope. I've seen members, our club member Sam, using these dryer packs with his cameras to keep the cameras dry when he's done with the viewing session, and I have to get some for myself because I think it's a really important thing. Dryness is important for these devices, especially for your cameras, because you want these things to last for a long time. And these drying packs is the same stuff that you would see when you're opening up your packages from Christmas, and it's those little gel packs that are in there. So even holding on to a bunch of those and then putting them into these to dryer caps for your eyepieces, I think would be a pretty good idea. 3D printing for astronomy. 3D printing has become really big nowadays. You can get just about anything printed 3D. These next 5 slides are going to take us into what could be done for some of the things related to astronomy viewing. And just for point of reference, the SpaceX rocket engines have 3D printed parts in them. So it just shows you if they're using them in their rocket engines, it's definitely come a long way. First up is the tripod leveling. Always important to level your tripod, especially for equatorial mounts. This individual here, instead of going with the button mount, decided to make his from 3D printing, and he put these 3 leveling tabs into this bracket that sits right between his telescope mount and the tripod in there, and he can level it from 3 different sides. The website where you can find a lot of these is thinginverse.com, and there's quite a few devices and files out there where you can get this to do either your own 3D printing if you have it, or here for us in the local Toms River is Hobbytown in Winding River. For us here in Toms River, they'll do the 3D printing for you, and they have already done 3D printing for myself for my astrophotography rig. Another item that you can do for 3D printing is to make these 2 simple clips to attach to your Finderscope. and a laser pointer. So now you can have essentially a laser guided setup on your telescope instead of being handheld. Poloscope illuminator. This will help you when you're trying to polar align your equatorial mount. There's one that was done on cloudy nights, and Ron from our club is holding up a sample of one that has a photo sensor on there that you put the light onto it and it'll glow for a time, and you can have that on to your poloscope. The other one on the right hand side is one with an LED light and one of those button batteries that you can connect on there, and that'll illuminate your finder scope for setting up. Next is the desiccant caps again. This was made by Joel Short in Indiana from BuckeyesStargazer.net. Pretty decent view of it versus the one that we looked at earlier. Again, these particular ones would go into your eyepiece to keep the insides of your telescope dry. And last up, back to the binoculars. You could do 3D printing for solar and lunar filters. And, just having the proper lens of film in there, with the 3D printed caps, and that will help in your observing. Again, on the lunar side, I would just, still go with a good pair of sunglasses. Finishing up with the 3D printing, we'll look at some Apache cases. Apache cases are good. You can get them from Harbor Freight. They're also much cheaper than the Pelican cases. For your quality optical equipment, eyepieces, filters, you got to treat them with care. If not, you're inviting dirt, scratches, dents, or worse. Most observers eventually acquire one or more of these type of foam padded storage cases, no matter which brand you get. These cases will come in many different designs and colors, but all have certain common characteristics. They come with a lot of foam. You can pull the foam out to go with the different shapes of whatever you're putting in here. Here is on the left-hand side my William Optics telescope and the attachments for it. And in the left-hand case, I kind of cannibalized a bit and used the original foam for my SkyGuider Pro mount. I will tell you with this, I have 6 of these cases so far. The price is good, and you can get them from Harbor Freight. Now, something that is a little closer to home for me is dealing with individuals with visual impairment problems, low vision, eye injury, thick glasses, medical conditions. We're going to touch base on just one of those problems. Is called strabismus, and this YouTube video is from the Henry Ford TV.
Strabismus is any misalignment of the eye. It can be either eye crossing, which is called esotropia, or eyes that are drifting, so called exotropia. There are different ways for us to fix this. We can try glasses. Whenever the kids see better, their brain is going to pull the eyes together and use them together. But if they don't see better, then we can do eye muscle surgery, where we adjust the location of the muscles to help them keep their eyes straighter. What we want to do is we want to get the vision better. We want them in glasses. We want them to use the patching therapy so that they patch their good eye to force their brain to use the worse seeing eye and form the connections with that eye so that they can see. Once we know that the vision is good in both eyes, that's when we feel better about doing the eye muscle surgery.
Now, for myself, my daughter has this particular condition, and she has had improvements with therapy with it. But for her to do visual astronomy with the lenses has been a problem for her. One of the reasons she really doesn't look at my telescope. And through some of the presentations I've done at the Bradley Beach Library, the the Cherry Hill Library, and even at some of the star parties, has been mentioned about individuals that can't look through a telescope eyepiece properly. So one of the things I've done at our star parties, and it's worked out for other reasons, you know, the kids like looking through the telescope via the camera lens, and I let them take pictures with it. But this also affords the ability for people who can't look through an eyepiece to actually see a visual screen to look at what other people would see in the eyepiece. Not a 100% setup, because I do have two different size telescopes here, but it has worked out for several different reasons. The next level for this for me would be to get the Revolution Imager, which I have purchased. I still have to set it up to test it. And what that does through a camera on the telescope, not for imaging purposes, but for doing visual astronomy. And what this device does is it takes whatever you're looking at, creates a couple of quick stacks, and presents the image on the screen. I think it's great, and it would be good for people who can't really look through a telescope. And I am really looking to explore this and have it available for star parties when we can get to the star parties, getting past this whole COVID thing. And we'll sit here, look at this video presented by the Revolution Imager people, and they'll give a brief discussion on why and what they did with this.
The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible, said Albert Einstein, and now easily observable from your backyard. The technology is now, and this is a universal product that will connect to a myriad of different telescopes. It comes with the standard 1.25" connector found on just about every telescope ever made. So many people are searching their lives for a deeper understanding of the whole world, not just our little rocky, watery outpost we call Earth. Brave new frontiers are being pushed open by private companies like SpaceX and individuals like Buzz Aldrin to get we the people to Mars and beyond. A man had just stepped foot on another rocky outpost and taken a giant leap for mankind. And a chapter of human history was written through science, engineering, and education, and tons of desire. In order to desire something, you must first know it exists. Roger Bacon, a Franciscan monk, is credited for moving humankind from rationalization to inventing the scientific around 1250. I believe that launched humankind's ascent to the moon. We discovered it was attainable and desired it. My great hope is that the Revolution Imager will bring a visual masterpiece to your own backyard. The masterpiece is called the universe. The powerful technology incorporated here will make seeing what was invisible much more readily accessible in a number of different ways, using its exposure and stacking technology that you don't have to know about. But now that you don't have to take long trips to the desert, you can bring it right to your backyard and not have to use an expensive telescope. Carl Sagan said something somewhere incredible is waiting to be known.
Okay, that was the Revolution Imager, and between the Revolution Imager and my current setup using the Canon camera on a telescope for visual improvement for people, this is just me as a parent trying to find a better way. I'm not a medical professional, and that's what what I'm looking to do to try to help out. One, with my personal situation with my daughter, but also for anyone else who may be having a potential issue. We're getting close to the end, and now we're going to talk about the Binoviewer. This particular Binoviewer is from Celestron. It allows for you to adapt your two eyes to the telescope and view with both eyes simultaneously. In addition to eliminating eye fatigue associated with viewing through one eye for a prolonged period of time. The Binoviewer also provides a three-dimensional effect while observing many celestial objects. We will talk about the Binoviewer. This particular one here is from Orion, and we're going to listen to this little over 5-minute video from Ken from Orion.
Hello, I'm Ken with Orion Telescopes and Binoculars, and this is the Orion Premium Linear Binoviewer. Now, I'm really excited about this one because it's a lot different than your average Binoviewer that you might have had experience with in the past. So I want to tell you about that, but first let's get through the boring kind of basic parts to it, and then I'll show you what kind of sets this apart from your average one. First of all, it weighs 1 pound, 8 ounces, so just keep that in mind when you're adding the weight of your eyepieces and everything else to your setup. It's not super heavy, but it's dense. It will add a little bit to your telescope setup. The front is an 1.25" nozzle. It's threaded for filters. It's got a little safety retaining groove on it here that, in case your telescope set screw is not quite fully attached, it won't fall out. Or if you're using this at an angle and the weight on the diagonal is a little too much and it starts to sink down, it's not going to fall out because of that safety retaining groove there. On top, it's got compression rings, so it grabs each eyepiece solidly and it centers them. It doesn't, with a set screw, it might push it off to one side. So it keeps it nice and centered and it doesn't mar the surface of your eyepiece. Now, let's talk about some of the detail features and what sets this apart from your average Binoviewer. Now, we call this a linear Binoviewer because, as you can see, to adjust the inner eye distance, you just pull it apart. It actually does not use prisms, which is a big plus. If you can imagine a pair of binoculars or an average Binoviewer, you bend it in and out this way, and those prisms are angling, and sometimes it can be difficult to keep that precisely in alignment. So there's no prisms. It actually uses mirrors down here, and you're not actually misaligning anything as you move this in and out to adjust to your eye. Most Binoviewers require a large amount of back focus in order to reach focus. It's not uncommon to have like 3 to 4 inches back focus, rendering it not usable on telescopes such as reflectors because they only have an inch or two usually of back focus. An average Binoviewer will work no problem on a Schmidt-Cassegrain, on a refractor, on a Mac, but not on a reflector without using maybe a Barlow in the bottom, which then you've got the disadvantage of it amplifying the magnification. In some cases, a lot, like 3 to 4x over what the eyepiece that you're putting in would normally do. Well, with this Binoviewer, it has 0 back focus, and it doesn't use a Barlow to do that. So you've got the advantage of being able to use it on any telescope, reflector, Dobsonian obviously reflector, Cassegrain, refractor, Mac, anything, with no back focus requirements. If it'll reach focus with your eyepiece, it'll reach focus with a Binoviewer. And it does it without using the Barlow. So if you put a 20mm eyepiece in here, you'll get 20mm, whatever the magnification would be with the 20mm. It's not amplifying it. So low power, wide field views are within the range of a Binoviewer like this. The way it does that is the lens is built inside. So remember I said there's no prisms, there's mirrors up top, and then there are a series of lenses, and they're made out of lanthanum glass. So it's basically a low dispersion, an extra low dispersion ED glass, so you don't get any false color or other defects inherent in the Binoviewer itself. It's an erect image prism. It's basically a transfer lens, so it brings the light from the bottom up to the top, corrects the image, and allows you to use it without the need of a Barlow and with no back focus. So what that means is if you were to put this straight through on a refractor or a Mac or a Cassegrain, you'd actually get a correct image, a non-inverted, non-rotated, upright image. So on a Cassegrain, on a refractor, it's upright. If you wanted to use this in a diagonal, which is probably what you're going to be doing most of the time if you're using a refractor or a Cassegrain, so you're looking down this way and the telescope's pointed up this way, you can use it with a standard diagonal. The image will be upside down. Now for astronomy, that's not going to matter, right? There is no up and down in space. But just keep that in mind, since this is an erecting lens system built in, if you use it with a diagonal in a standard Cassegrain or refractor, you will get an upside down image. Now there's a way to fix that. We've introduced the Orion pentaprism. which when used with a refractor or a cassegrain and the Binoviewer gives you a correct image. So that would be what you want to do if you want to use this for daytime terrestrial viewing. You'd be looking downwards into it and you get a correct image. But for astronomy, an upside down image doesn't matter, and you've got the ability to use two eyes and get a nice wide field of view at low magnification. So having said all that, you get a very nice, sharp, bright image. Speaking of bright, I don't think I mentioned the mirrors used inside are dielectric coated, so you're losing very, very little light as the incoming light bounces off of the mirrors. Coupled with the lantern glass, it's an excellent quality image. Now what I haven't mentioned is what the experience is with a Binoviewer. If you're not experienced with using one, you'll be very pleasantly surprised. It's a stereo, okay, I hesitate to say it's a stereo image because technically it's not, right? You're still going through a single telescope, looking at the moon or looking at a planet or a deep sky object. But your brain is used to working in stereo, so the effect is pretty three-dimensional. And when you look at the moon through a Binoviewer, it is amazing how much more detail you see, and it seems to make the mountains pop out of the background and the craters look like they've got depth to them. Just squinting through one eye, you can get used to it with a telescope, and I'm sure you are used to it if you've been using a telescope, but it does not compare with using two eyes looking through a Binoviewer. It's one of my favorite types of views. Now, since the Binoviewer doesn't require a Barlow, you can use it at low power, and of course at high power if you put different eyepieces into it. It works for all types of objects in the sky. The moon, like I said, amazing at any magnification. Planets at high power look almost three-dimensional and definitely show more detail than you're used to squinting through one eye. But putting low-power eyepieces in here and looking at the Orion Nebula or the M13, the Globular Cluster in Hercules, it's a beautiful view when you can do a low-power view of the object, which is pretty much impossible with a normal Binoviewer, but is allowable with something like this.
Okay, that is the Binoviewer. Now, this is not a cheap item, but then again, nothing related to astronomy is really cheap. This is something that I am interested in checking out. It's just a matter of time, but I find this a pretty interesting item to explore for myself. So we are wrapping up right now. Here is the listed reference material sources, which of course will be available for anybody who wants to explore any of the items presented here. And just keep in mind, at least for myself, the best part about astronomy is to get out there and be with some good friends. And hopefully soon we will be able to get back out there into the park once we can get past this COVID situation we've been in. Thanks for watching, and clear skies.